In this video, we're going to look at applications of quadratic equations. In number 1, it says, the hypotenuse of a right triangle is the square root of 34 inches long. The length of one leg is 1 inch less than twice the length of the other leg. Find the lengths of the legs of the triangle. So the first thing we want to do is draw and label a triangle. So if we have a right triangle, we know that the hypotenuse is the square root of 34. And they told us that one leg is 1 inch less than twice the other length. So we're going to make one leg x, and then the other length is going to be 2x minus 1, which represents 1 inch less than twice the first leg. And now they want to know, what is the relationship between the sides of a triangle? And remember, we have a right triangle, and Pythagorean theorem tells us that a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So we have a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. And now we want to write an equation using the given information above. So our a is represented by x, so we have x squared, and our b is represented by 2x minus 1, so we have plus 2x minus 1 squared is equal to c squared, and c is represented by the square root of 34, so we have the square root of 34 squared. And now we're going to have x squared plus, we're going to square 2x minus 1, so we get 4x squared minus 4x plus 1 is equal to, the square root of 34 squared is 34. And now we're going to combine our like terms on the left side, and we're going to subtract 34 from both sides. So we have x squared plus 4x squared is 5x squared minus 4x, and then we have 1 minus 34, so we have minus 33 is equal to 0. And now we're going to use quadratic formula to solve this. And remember, a is 5, b is negative 4, and c is negative 33. So we have x is equal to negative b, so we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is negative 33, all divided by 2a, all divided by 2 times 5. And this is equal to negative 4 is 4, plus or minus, we have the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 5 times negative 33, which is equal to the square root of 676, which is equal to 26. So we have 4 plus or minus 26 divided by 10, which means that x is equal to 4 plus 26 over 10, or x is equal to 4 minus 26 over 10. And 4 plus 26 is 30, divided by 10 is equal to 3. And 4 minus 26 is negative 22, divided by 10, which could be reduced to negative 11 over 5. And we're not worried about the negative answer, because you can't have a negative length of a side of a triangle. So x is going to be equal to 3. And our other side was represented by 2x minus 1, which is equal to 2 times 3 minus 1, or 6 minus 1 is equal to 5. So then we could say that the lengths of the legs of the triangle are 3 inches and 5 inches. And 2, it says, a jeweler sells rings at craft shows. The profit depends on the number of rings produced. And they give us a profit function of P of x is equal to negative 1/10 x squared plus 42x minus 1,260, where x is the number of rings and P is the profit in dollars. For A, it says, how much profit does the jeweler make when 12 rings are produced? Assume all the rings produced are sold. So in order to find how much profit when we produce 12 rings, we're going to plug 12 into our profit function. So we're going to find P of 12, and that's equal to negative 1/10 times 12 squared plus 42 times 12 minus 1,260. And this is equal to negative 1/10 times 12 squared, which is 144, plus 42 times 12 is 504, minus 1260. And this is equal to negative 770.40. And the negative represents a loss. So if we have negative profit, we consider that a loss. And we would say that the jeweler suffers a loss of $770.40 when 12 rings are produced. In B, it says, how many rings must be made to make a profit of 3,000? If we want to know how many rings we need to produce in order to make a profit of 3,000, 3,000 is going to represent P of x, so we're going to say that 3,000 is equal to negative 1 over 10 x squared plus 42x minus 1260. And now we're going to solve for x. We're going to subtract 3,000 from both sides first, so we can say that negative 1 over 10 x squared plus 42x. And then we have negative 1260 minus 3,000 is negative 4260. And now this is equal to 0. So now we have our equation in the form where we can use the quadratic formula. And to avoid having to use fractions, I'm going to multiply everything by negative 10 so that I get rid of the fraction in front of my x squared term, and so that I make the first term positive. So I'm going to have x squared minus 420x plus 42,600 is equal to 0. And now A is represented by 1, B is represented by negative 420, and C is 42,600. So now we can say that x is equal to negative 420 plus or minus the square root of negative 420 squared minus 4 times 1 times 42,600, all divided by 2a, which is 2 times 1. And this is equal to negative 420 is 420 plus or minus, and inside the square root, I have the square root of negative 420 squared is 176,400 minus 170,400, all divided by 2. And this is equal to 420 plus or minus the square root of 6,000 divided by 2. So then we can say that x is equal to 420 plus the square root of 6,000 divided by 2, or x is equal to 420 minus the square root of 6,000 divided by 2. And when we do 420 plus the square root of 6,000 divided by 2, we get 248.73. And when we do 420 minus the square root of 6,000 divided by 2, we get 171.27. And remember that x represents the number of rings produced, so we can't have a partial ring produced, so we're going to round. So we can say that either 172 or 249 rings must be produced to make a profit of $3,000. And that's all for our video on applications of quadratic equations.